So Texas doesn't have an state income tax, right? Just a high property
That's
tax.
correct. That is correct.
So I'm assuming probably very similar to like Florida.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
But
Florida has a decently high property tax. It's not like super crazy, but it's up there. Again, I mean, they tout the no income tax, but they're going to get there. I mean, the state's going to get theirs one way or the other. So I don't know. But I can deal Florida, and I don't know if this is a national thing. I don't know if all states do it, but Florida, if you sell property, if you take that money and you invest it in another property, you don't pay tax on the
that's
sale
Texas. That's Texas as well.
of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I think even with
but
federal income tax, it's like that. As long as you sell it and invest it, and I think that's with a lot of investments. If you do that within a certain period of time, you're sheltered for a little bit until you cash out.
Yeah. Okay.
speaking of taxes, I paid mine Tuesday. Wasn't too happy about that, and I don't know if you guys filed an extension or not, but I was just like, I'm not going to prolong this pain any longer than I have to, and I just, it seems
We
like.
have.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say we have an extension, but we also have a pretty good idea what our tax bill is going to be, and so we just went ahead and paid it. And if it, our extension, if they come back to us in end of May, June is when our CPA is like, hey, this is when I can get everything done and wrapped up. If we are due money back, well, then we'll get money back.
You should. Well, that's good. I mean, if you overpaid, that's good. But it's still, to this day, explaining to someone how they think it's so great that they got a refund. It's like, I might get a deal. Oh, Luke, man, I got a $1,200 refund. Can you believe that? Isn't that great? And I was like, dude, it is great. I'll tell you what. How about every month you give me $100 and we will sign a contract. And at the end of the year, I'll give you all $1,200 back.
Fuck yeah.
I will do that, and if you want to make it $200 a month and I give you $2,400, that's even better.
Yep.
And they're like, well, I wouldn't do that. It's like, well, then why are you doing it with the government?
Yep.
Because that's what's happening. They're making money off your money.
You're giving them an interest-free loan.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm just not too happy about my taxes. Roger is, though. Roger loves taxes.
Dude,
that's the number one that's the number one thing on my little outline here, literally, is taxes. Because like Josh, I went ahead and had to file an extension, but kind of like, hey man, you need to go ahead and write this check because here's the reality. And I have to check exactly what this means, but you have the penalty and then you have the interest on what you owe. So just because you filed the extension doesn't mean that you don't owe the money on 18 April. And for those that have an LLC, so number one, I tweeted this earlier today, LLCs do pay taxes. I know everybody, when they talk about Elon Musk, like, oh, he doesn't own a house. He just, his LLC owns that. Dude, let me break it down to you. LLCs pay taxes and they pay taxes just like everybody else, unless you're filed as an S Corp, which, even then you're still paying a boatload of taxes. You might save a couple grand, but you're paying it in payroll and whatever else. Anyway, pisses me off because I sit here and it's like, well, we have to file. So we file for an extension. Accountant says the same thing. Hey, you're going to owe this amount of money, which we know we're going to owe anyway because my wife runs her own business. So we know that. And we set it aside and whatever. But this year happened to be more than what we anticipated, just based off last year to this year. And what kills me is, and I bet we could probably go back to last year and have the same argument, but it's like you claim zero, they take extra. So you can't claim like -1, right? I claim zero. They take as much out as they can possibly take. We have a home, like a lot of listeners out there. We pay our mortgage. You have the interest on that. It's like at the end of the day, how do you still end up owing money? It's criminal, and it pisses me off. And it makes me wonder. So, like the 16th Amendment that was ratified, and I had to Google it in 1913. What in the hell were they thinking? There is no way. So, we've been going back and forth on the Slack channel. I want to get your guys' take on it. So here's my thought on taxes. Well, one, our buddy Ted, he had he's got the perfect solution. And of course it'll never work. And Josh kind of went down that road a little bit on the Slack channel. Never worked because people can't save money for crap. So they'd be broke. But at the end of the day, if you just made every citizen write a check at the end of the year, you would solve the problem with taxes. I guarantee it. because right now, like with electronic funds transfer and ACH, I get it. We all like being paid early. Kind of gets rid of float check day, but the other side of that is you don't see, like, when was the last time you guys have seen like a paper payroll stub? Like, you don't see it anymore. Hell, dude, I don't even get an email anymore saying that, hey, your electronic stub is available. I happen to go check it every couple months, and if we see an anomaly in what we get every couple weeks, I'll go take a look at it. But taxes come out, people don't even know what they're paying. And if you made them write a check, but my whole solution to this, and I kind of get y'all's thoughts on it. We should owe nothing to the federal government for taxes. The federal government should send a bill to the states that is based on the number of representatives that you have in the House, right? They should send that bill to the states, and the states determine how they want to levy that tax, how they want to collect it, whatever. Because what you're going to have is these states that have, balanced budget amendments, these states that have a surplus, these states that do well are going to attract more personnel because you may have zero tax in that state. You can get away with it because maybe you're doing a good job of balancing the budget. Maybe you're making money off of tourism. Maybe there's just a million other things that you can do. And I think at that point, you put the onus on the state, and then it's easier for people, like we've already seen over the last 2 years, to leave the state if they don't like the tax situation. But as it is right now, the buck is always pushed from the states to the federal government, where it's like, well, hey, Arizona, and we have a pretty good tax system in Arizona. I mean, taxes actually went down, believe it or not. Our property tax actually went down. So I applaud the state of Arizona, but I get so pissed off at the federal government, but it's easy just to pass the buck on to them. I mean, I don't know, Josh. For me up front, and that'll never happen either, right? That'll never happen either. But to me, that sounds like a pretty daggum decent solution. And then people would care about the however many $150 billion that we've sent to Ukraine. Then people would care.
I absolutely fully support that. I think if people had to, and you could even do it, they have to write a check once a year, at the end of the year, or do they even write a check every quarter? That would be painful. And when people will realize how much they are being fleeced because they are getting taxed for every little thing. In North Carolina, I have the privilege of paying the state of North Carolina $200 a year to file a report to tell them how much money I made on my LLC, right? So I've got to pay them, one, to tell them how much money I made, and then I've got to pay them in taxes, right, on the money that I made. When you're like, what? Like that's just it. Like that's insane. And when it comes to the tax thing, it's like, okay, we're not gonna tell you how much you owe. You've got to figure that out yourself. And then if you're wrong, we're gonna put you in jail. Like that's straight. That's just straight bananas. I think a flat tax, either like you said, the whole like cut a check once a quarter, cut a check once a year. That will never happen because elected officials know if they were to change the law to do that, they would be out of a job in a heartbeat.
They'd be broke.
They would. Well, one, they'd be not only would they be broke, but once people realized how much their elected officials were passing laws that taxes them, they would vote their sorry asses out of office. They'd be done. So that'll never happen. The next best thing would be a flat tax. That's it. Make it simple. And if you're going to hire 87,000 new IRS agents, I think you guys can tell me how much I owe in taxes instead of me having to go pay somebody to figure it out. And then for you to come back and tell me, much later, well, no, you were wrong. We're adjusting it and you actually owe us more money. So
That's what kills me, right? That's what kills me. It's like
yeah,
you're paying to have somebody tell you how much you owe for the federal government to come back and say, no, we've already done this calculation and this is how much you really owe.
exactly, exactly. You already know. Just tell me. Just tell me how much I owe. And then you have these folks out there who are doing their taxes on a 1040 EZ talking about, well, everybody needs to pay their fair share. If you do your taxes on a 1040 EZ form, you need to sit down and you need to shut the F up about people paying their fair share. If you don't need an extension, you should probably sit down and shut the F up about people paying their fair share. That's absolutely nuts. But you know what? And so we talked a little bit about taxes for the homeowners out there, and I'm speaking directly to the homeowners with a credit score of 680 or higher, which bro, if you don't have a credit score or of 680 or higher, you need to get your shit together. Anyway, you are about to pay more, $40 a month more, to subsidize bad credit borrowers, high risk home loans, high risk mortgages, as part of the Federal Housing Finance Agency's push for affordable housing, right? And affordable, subjective. Um, so Biden, it's new. It's going to come out. So about $40 per month on a home loan of 400K, and it's going to be more. Oh, you put a 15 or 20% down payment on your home, that fee is going to be higher to subsidize people with bad credit taking out high risk mortgages. Did we not learn anything from 2008 on high risk mortgages on subprime loans? Did we not learn our lesson?
Well, it's
A lot
okay
of
because now it's subsidized.
right. Yeah, because those
Uh,
people, even though they're it's subsidized, those people definitely won't fault. They definitely won't default on their on their mortgages or their loans. It just we have learned nothing. I like getting
Well,
Luke's take on that in taxes.
well, okay. So I kind of have a question to push both y'all and leave it to the end. So I don't. First of all, I like Roger's idea. I do not like. I'm with you, Roger. It's like, what were you thinking? Maybe I should do some research on the 16th Amendment and be like, what was going on at the time uh, where they thought this was a good idea? Because look, let's say that this didn't exist. 16th Amendment is not now the 16th is 17. We just have one less amendment, and somebody proposed this now, it would never pass. It would never. You're going to tax my what? My income. You're going to tax it how much? What? So the 16th Amendment reads, just for those of you who don't have a photographic memory, like Josh, the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived without apportionment among the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration. Yeah, that to me, I think that's a bad amendment. But Josh worships the Constitution, so he must think it's good. But I guess my thing is, if you did do your idea, Roger, um, would that jive with the 16th Amendment? I mean, I guess it could, but you'd really have to, the state would really have to keep track of what everyone's income was, and it would basically be the same thing anyway. So you'd almost have to get rid of the same as it is now. That is, you'd almost have to get rid of the 16th Amendment to implement your plan.
Well, I
So,
think the difference would be
Josh,
you would file one form. It would go to whatever state you live in, and that is your tax, period. And if I don't like that tax, I have a lot more influence here in the state of Arizona, and just as Josh has with North Carolina. Because right now, dude, here's what, and I know I'm jumping all over here, but here's what pisses me off about the tax thing. It's not even about the money. That is the one time in my life that I truly feel helpless. Right? I feel helpless because you know what? The bill is what it is, and you got to pay it, and you don't have a choice. That's what pisses me off about the whole thing. And there's no recourse. Whereas if it's pushed down to a state level, I feel like, okay, I can be an activist here locally and have some influence over that process.
So I would be absolutely 100% on board with abolishing the 16th Amendment. I would also be 100% on board with abolishing the 17th Amendment as well, as we've already discussed. So yeah, I don't understand why they did what they did, and the mentality at the time. I will say, Roger, that when you say you feel helpless and you feel like you have no recourse, there was a group of folks on December 15th who in 1773 who felt helpless and thought that they didn't have any recourse until they tossed a whole bunch of tea into the Boston Harbor. So I mean, you're not completely helpless.
You seen the price of tea
There are
lately?
some options out there.
Inflation, brother.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ain't nobody
so
throw a tea into the harbor,
it's
for sure. It's expensive.
it's different. Obviously it's a different world now. And that's not an excuse. I'm just saying it's a different world. What really, I mean, this could trail off in another direction and really take it off the rails. But like, what recourse do people have now? Because we saw regardless of what you think about January 6th, you saw what happened to those few people there, and So, what are you going to do? It's tough. I don't think the message is going to be played, the right way. I just don't think people have a lot of recourse. I think that and this guy, I mean, this can dovetail nicely into some of the uh, topics that people wanted us to talk about. People are doom and gloom tonight, man. I'll tell you what. We asked for topics on Slack, but yeah, I mean, what's the recourse? I mean, throwing tea into a harbor, they dressed up as Native Americans, and sure, you know, I just don't. I don't know. It would have to be something. It'd have to be mass protest all at the same time, and I just don't know. And not enough people are going to do that. Like 3% now is just a lot different than 3% was back then, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. Um, it would have to be like you said, it would have to be nationwide. It would have to be coordinated. It'd have to be nationwide, and it would have to be at the local level. Right, it really does have to start at the local level, because you actually have more the ability to actually reach out and get a hold of touch and get in front of your your district representative.
And it would have to be grassroots on both sides too.
Yeah.
You couldn't
Oh yeah.
have any division on this if you had 5% of the population that just decide 5%. I mean, I'm going over 3 here, but if you had 5% from differing ideals and all that stuff, different frames of thought, they aren't all conservative or liberal. This is just a movement,
Yeah.
who decided to peacefully, without damaging property or anything, shut something down. That would be something. 5% of the population, that's a lot of people. But it would have to be, there'd have to be a leader, and that leader would have to be respected, well respected. And as divisive as everything is right now, I just don't see that happening anytime soon, unless Josh gets his wish and everything turns just horribly awful, which he might.
No, I don't see that happening anytime soon either, because conservatives, and I'll throw the GOP in here too, even though they're not necessarily conservative. Conservatives suck at grassroots movements. They truly do. The left has it down to a science. They are very very good at grassroots movements. Conservatives, not not so much. And I think the conservative movement, and Roger, you get jump in here. I think the conservative populace is fracturing a little bit more with this silly Trump DeSantis food fight that's continuing more so on Trump's side than DeSantis's side. So, Roger, what's your thoughts on that?
I'm going to go see if the front desk has any pudding cups. I'm serious. I'll be right back. Go ahead, Roger. I'll be out for half a second.
Good Lord. Here's the one thing DeSantis, and everybody knows how I feel about Trump. I love his policies. I'll start with DeSantis. He hasn't even declared he's running yet. Like, I get it. Like, everybody expects him to run. I think he's going to run. If I had to bet money on it, I'd say he's going to run. But he hasn't declared yet. So I don't know from the Trump side, and you're starting to see it all over the ads now. It's truly a preemptive strike, and it's not even a preemptive strike. It's more of a deterrence. I think he's really trying to get to not just DeSantis, because he's probably got a lot of resiliency, at least being prior, military, but trying to touch his family. Because that's what happens, right? You decide you're going to run for office, whatever. You're going to sit down and have this talk with the family that, hey, look, a lot of bad things are going to come out, and you're going to fight like hell to convince them that, hey, none of this stuff is true. I don't have skeletons in the closet, yada, yada, yada. And so I think a lot of it is aimed at his wife, who's obviously just gone through, or probably still going through, a battle with cancer. But it's like, hey, do you really, really, really want to go through all of this, especially with, your wife's health issues and this and that. Now, the thing I like about DeSantis, and it's not just DeSantis, but it's governors in general, with the exception of Gavin Newsom, governors have a record to run on. And generally speaking, other than Andrew Gillum, who's probably still laying on the floor naked, cracked out, they are generally vetted. So he's gone through some process. Because one thing, like you said, I mean, one thing Democrats are good at is they're going to find the dirt. And if there's not any dirt, they're going to make it up. And especially with a state like Florida, if there was something just remotely out there that they could cling to, they would have done it during the gubernatorial race. So on one hand, DeSantis, there's still some, I have questions about him. How's he going to do on the national stage? How's he going to, because there's one thing when you're appealing to a certain portion of the country, when you're appealing to the voters of the state of Florida, which what he did in Florida is historical. Okay. But there's a difference between appealing to conservatives and independents in Florida versus trying to appeal to conservatives and independents in California. And we haven't seen that yet. Not to say he won't do a good job, but we haven't seen it. What steers me away, and I want to be on the Trump train bad. The reason I can't jump on the Trump train is bottom line, you can't win without independence. Until I see something that shows that, okay, he is doing something to grab independence, you can't win. Okay. Now that doesn't mean if it's Trump Biden that I'm not, I'm going to vote for Biden. That ain't going to happen. But the reality is, if you can't pull independence, and I have seen nothing come out of his campaign, I've seen none of the rhetoric that comes out that says that, you know what, folks that were in the middle or maybe lean slightly left are like, you know what? Yep, I'm voting for that Trump guy. And part of it, like you said, it's messaging. I mean, do they have been on the wrong side of this? And Luke, you did this. You said this like many, many, many moons ago on one of the early episodes. The moral right and stuff. Right now, the left is crafting messaging on everything. You look at the abortion issue. That's a prime example. The abortion issue. We being the conservatives have a shot to shape that narrative to be in the moral right. The Texas judge, I thought, kind of threw out a little hint. Hey, this fetus might have some rights. Okay, that is a different ball game, because once you start accepting the fetus as a baby, as a person, it's a different ball game other than women's reproductive rights. Okay, but we're not hearing any of that. All we're hearing is one side of the tail. It's no different than the guns. The anti-2A and the assault weapon ban, which the ATF director, I loved it. Well, I'm not a weapons expert. You know what? I tell you what, Biden, you have a lot of people running a lot of departments and agencies that aren't experts in the agency that they are running. Just saying, just saying. But, as opposed to, the left coming out with weapons of war, and I've seen your tweets, several times. When were you issued an AR-15 in the Army? I don't think I ever was,
Never.
right? But you don't hear anything from the right. They just choose to ignore it. And it's like, hey, man, the left is out there crafting, the messaging that they want. And, it's funny. I know I'm kind of bouncing all over the place, and I'll kick it over to Luke. I had a pretty long conversation with Ted today, and he was one of our listeners, and he was talking about, he's kind of done with the Republican Party and conservatives in general, because they're trying to cram thing down people's throats, and they're basically making laws, right, to protect our liberties and freedoms. And it's like, hey, if you're good at the messaging and you really hone around the right message there, you don't have to do that. I just think that we've missed some opportunities there to really be in the moral right, be on the moral right. And instead, we're just being quiet, and we're letting Democrats craft whatever narrative that they want to craft. And what we're not talking about, Luke, is, people's 401ks. I was looking at the market the other day. I think there's been like a 3K bump in the market since Trump left office. Okay, so we're going into almost 3 years. You've had a 3K bump market in the Dow Jones. People's 401ks are trash. Josh, saw it out today. Here in Maricopa County, our gas just hit $5 a gallon again. Inflation is still high. Food prices are still high. There's still food shortages. I mean, Luke, it's like we're not focusing on those issues, and I don't understand. And we'll get to this here in a minute with the debt limit increase that the Republicans have kicked out there. I mean, do you think they've missed an opportunity here in the last year and a half to really craft this narrative?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I think we're really up against it. I think that any sort of messaging that's going to come out of the Republican Party is going to be tough to get out there to begin with, because the deck is just stacked against them. And I'm talking about the fifth column, or whatever you want to call it, which is the media. It's tough to get any kind of messaging out there. And this is kind of to Josh's point. It's like, if the GOP or the RNC, whatever you want to call it, with their heads out of their fourth point of contact and realize this is grassroots time, because your average Karen living in the suburbs of a large city is being inundated with The View and MSNBC and hell, ABC, CBS, NBC. That's the messaging they get. And that's all those are those mainstream media sources are just the propaganda arm of the DNC. That's all they are. So it's tough to get any messaging out to begin with. Like on Fox News, it's easy, but they've got all those people anyway. It doesn't matter. I'd venture to say that 90% of people who watch Fox News, probably more on a regular basis, are going to generally vote Republican. I think this time it may be a little bit different because you got the whole Trump DeSantis thing, you know. But it's just tough to get a message out there. That's my thing. It's just tough to get a message out there for the Republicans. So you got to go grassroots with it, which they're not good at. So I could, it's not that I'm black-pilled or anything, but Josh called the last election. I mean, he called it shortly before 2020. He's like, Trump's going to lose this. And we're like, oh, Josh, you're crazy. You're not looking at the rallies. You know what you're talking about. And then, man, Roger and I had to eat a lot of crow. A lot more went into that, obviously, with all the last minute tweaking of the systems and everything. But Biden did win, and I could definitely see. It's so hard for me to believe that if Biden ran against Trump or DeSantis and some ideas on possible viable GOP candidates other than Trump or DeSantis, I'll get into that in a second and kick it to Josh. But it's just hard to believe that if Biden runs against someone viable other than Trump, it's hard to believe he's going to win again. It's just so hard to believe. But I felt this way, lead in on October 31st of 2020. It's just, I don't know. It's a tough thing. As far as messaging on the economy, I mean, it's right in front of everybody's eyes. But oh God, Roger. Ooh. All right, we're about to get into this. The economy's right in everybody's face. The economy's right in everybody's face. It's like, how can you not message that? How can you not invest a little money on some kind of social media campaign, just bypass NBC, the mainstream media, and just message, hey, have you looked at your 401k lately? Let's go, Brandon, or something like that. I mean, it's just too easy. Because at this point, Biden has taken ownership of everything that's going on. Can't blame Trump anymore. That ship has sailed. They're still trying to do it. I'm trying to blame Trump for everything, man. It's crazy. We could talk about the violence in Chicago and all that stuff and how they're trying to blame Trump for that. It's crazy. But so viable candidates other than Trump or DeSantis, viable candidates. Tim Scott is the first one that comes to mind. I'd have to go down the list. Just, I don't think Kristi Noem is viable. I think she'd be a good vice, possibly in the right circumstances. I think Tim Scott would be a good vice as well. Nikki Haley, do I think she'd be a good president? Maybe, but I don't know. Viable candidate who won't run this time, Sarah Sanders, I should say. But we talked about her before, man. I'd vote for her tomorrow. Bro, if she ran, I may vote for her in the primary over DeSantis at this point. That's how much I believe in her. That chick is no joke. And I could definitely see her being commander in chief. But Roger, bro, I'm not going to say what Roger said. I'll let.
Because
he's right.
I'm
You
right.
are totally right. Oh yeah. Oh,
I'm not even going to say that name.
No, don't. But think of viable candidates is one thing. Viable candidates that could beat Biden is another, and that's why I don't think that Trump is a viable candidate to beat Biden. But the one that Roger said is a viable candidate to beat Biden. So now we're back to our old catch-22 that
Josh is like, Lord help me, no.
So if someone's, a rhino, like Dan Crenshaw, which boy, we could really talk about Dan Crenshaw tonight too. If one of them ran, now you've got a choice between like Dan Crenshaw-ish type candidate or Joe Biden. It's like, now what? But
So I'm not going to say the name. I'll leave it for Roger to say since he brought it up. But Lord help us all. So the GOP, you're right. They suck at grassroots. They suck at messaging. And we talked about this before. You look at when George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, the bill in Florida, don't say gay. Like they have watered. They can take something, create a catchphrase out of it, that will catch like wildfire and spread quick and is powerful. They truly are masters at that. The GOP sucks at that very thing. An example would be when we took both chambers and we had the ability to gut and overturn Obamacare, and it was like, all right, GOP, what you got? What's your solution on this? And they had nothing. It's like you've had years to craft something and let it sit on the shelf and then dust it off when it's ready. Now it's go time. It's right, and you have absolutely nothing. We talked about com plans and not plan. We have a plan to invade every country in the world, every single one. They sit on a shelf, and once every couple of years, some poor staff officer is directed to update it, with the latest and greatest, and that's their life for months on end. But our elected officials, who do this every day in and day out, they don't have anything ready. North Carolina is another great example. Everybody and a lot of folks are watching the North Carolina GOP right now because they have a veto proof majority in the state legislature. That's how they got rid of the Jim Crow pistol permit law. Do you think they introduced legislation the first week after they got that veto proof majority to implement constitutional carry, implement school choice, ban ban gender affirming care for minors? You think they had that ready to go? Nope, they didn't. It's like, what are you guys waiting on? Because you're not going to have that forever. I mean, that could go away tomorrow. So what are you waiting on? Just go ahead and do it because that's what your base wants. But yet you know, they do nothing. And the larger GOP at the national level, they're the same way. They suck at messaging and they suck at the grassroots. They suck at knocking on doors. And it's really not that difficult. It's truly not. So, we'll see what happens, but the grassroots has to be there. As far as viable GOP candidates, and when I say viable, I mean folks who have a shot at beating Biden in a national election that are not named Trump or DeSantis. Well, Trump does it. All right, Trump didn't win in 2020, and I am glad, folks. Mark your calendars. Today was the day that Roger said he is off the Trump train.
Did he say
I,
that? Did you say that?
I
yes,
said I can't get on the Trump train as much as I want because of the independent. So,
Okay.
so
which
technically, being off the train would be
Like
correct.
1 foot on, 1 foot off. You're like hanging on the caboose,
Hey,
running.
just dude,
behind it.
if you can't win the independent voters, it doesn't matter, right?
and that's the thing. I'm so glad to hear you finally say that.
I've been saying that. I said it last episode.
Whatever. No, you didn't. No, you
Can I,
didn't.
can I throw one thing in here, Josh? Put a bookmark in that because I want you to continue your thought. I order you to continue your thought, whatever. So one thing that one thing that Roger said is Trump still has influence, and you guys went back and forth on that. Well, I was thinking about that the other day as I was driving from Texas to Oklahoma, and I was like, he does still have influence because imagine a scenario. He does because imagine a scenario wherein he endorses DeSantis. And then on the flip side, imagine a scenario where he said, don't vote for DeSantis, vote for anybody but DeSantis. There's enough influence there to swing enough votes in one state or another to affect things. And same with same in maybe a handful of local races. And influence could also be a negative thing, right? You don't want Trump endorsing you. So I do think there's some influence left. I do think that. But anyway, Josh, I just want to throw that in because I guarantee I'll forget it.
Yeah. No, I don't fully disagree with you. I think Trump has. I think his influence is waned quite a bit to where it's almost minimal. Whatever he does have. So I lost my thought. Or what I was saying. Oh yeah, talking about the Trump train. Trump, he can't pull independents like Roger said. He's just the people who did those independents who didn't vote for him in 2020, whether they stayed home or they voted for Biden, they're not all of a sudden just going to show up and vote for Trump in 2024. It's just not going to happen. And he's spending his time instead of if I was Trump, right, especially as much chaos as he's caused it, and much dust as he's raised about the stolen 2020 election. Okay, all right. What are you going to do to fix it specifically? What specific policies should the GOP pursue legislatively to fix it? He has it. Not once has he said that. Ron DeSantis fixed that. Ron DeSantis came out with a plan in Florida and he passed it. He got it through the legislature and he passed it, and now it is law, right? Um, so I'm going to see candidates not named Trump or DeSantis that would have a shot at winning. As much as I hate to say it, God, I hate to say it, and I'm not. And this is a name that hasn't come up yet, and it's not the one that Roger mentioned. Mike Pence.
Oh,
I hate,
maybe.
dude. The most. I mean, just the most milk toast. He would have to have the right. He would have to have the proper running mate. Like he would have to pick the right running mate, and his running mate would have to be somebody like Tim Scott
Tim Scott.
or Nikki Haley. It would have to be one of those two. I just other than that, a GOP candidate that could win on the national stage, I'll save that one for Roger and let him throw that out there. I don't, as far as being viable, I don't see it. I really don't, because the GOP, much like the Democrats, the GOP, they didn't have a plan in 2020. There's nobody that was quote waiting in the wings that they kind of was like, okay, this is if we lose in 2020, this is our guy. This is our guy for 2024. Ron DeSantis really, I mean, yeah, he won in 2018, but come 2020, he wasn't on the national stage at all, by and large. And he's really come off, the last 24 months. He's really come on strong, especially with his fight with Disney and everything. But I don't know of any other GOP candidate that can win on the national stage, not named DeSantis or Trump, other than Mike Pence with a really, really strong runner mate. Or Roger, you want to go ahead and throw the grenade in the room?
Hey man, this might be Mitt Romney's time. Mitt
Oh,
Romney
Jesus.
could actually win on the national level, but you have to take a step back. We have to take a step back because when you say viable candidates, we automatically assume that you're going to make it out of the primary. And I don't know anybody beats Trump or DeSantis. Those are your two candidates, Trump, DeSantis. Again, it's up in the air with DeSantis. You'll see when he hits the trail, if he decides to hit the trail. And you know what? There's a very good possibility that maybe DeSantis, I shouldn't say good possibility. There is a path where he says, you know what? Let me sit this one out for the next 4 years. Kind of let some of this, let this path clear itself where I'm not necessarily getting to a mudslinging fight. But you've got Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and this is I'm pulling from Politico for published a couple days ago. Nikki Haley can't win. Mike Pence can't win. I'm talking about just getting out of the primary. Okay,
Yeah.
not going to get out of the primary. Ted Cruz ruled himself out because he can't get out of the primary. Asa Hutchinson, who declared a couple weeks ago, not going to get out of the primary. Perry Johnson can't win a primary. Vivek Rama, can't even pronounce his name, so not going to get out of the primary. Kristi Noem is interesting. She's a maybe. Strong governor, as far as the media is concerned. Josh has got something.
Solid one.
Oh, I was going to say, I got one for you. What if she throws her hat in the ring? Liz Cheney.
Oh, hell no.
Man, never out of the primary.
As a Democrat?
Liz, wait, hey.
Yeah,
yeah, right. Hey, check this out. Perfect storm, worst case scenario, Mitt Romney and Liz Cheney as the GOP ticket for the presidential.
Dude, that would not surprise me a bit. I wouldn't even surprise me if Mike Pence or Mitt Romney, one of those rhino type Republicans, picked her as the running mate.
Pence wouldn't pick
because
her.
they're just that stupid. Well,
Pence
you probably
would pick her.
right about Pence, but it just wouldn't surprise me.
That would be a case where I would not go to the poll. Like I would not show up to vote.
I actually don't even want to think about that. So we're just going to skip over what you just said because I'm just going to pretend that's going to happen. Kristi Noem could have a shot, I think, come out of a primary and again, we haven't seen her on the national spotlight a lot, but what I have seen so far, she's fairly battle tested. She's good on TV. She's articulate, but again, you get on that national stage, there's a possibility there. Mike Rogers, nope. I like Tim Scott. You have to see some more of his platform. but I really, really like Tim Scott. But you know what? I mean, again, you take a Tim Scott versus a Donald Trump in the primary. I think Tim Scott might be a little too passive. I think he would just get bowled over by Trump. Chris
Yeah.
Sununu, Greg Abbott.
Uh,
They throw out there Chris Christie.
Nah.
Nope. Marco Rubio. Nope. He already got his ass beat last time. And what I
right.
have heard a lot lately is Glenn Youngkin.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
I think he could
Yeah.
actually do pretty well in a primary. So I'd probably say, I mean, you got to say what? Christy Noem, Glenn Youngkin, Ron DeSantis. Those are your three challengers to Trump if they all decide to run in the primary. I mean, do you see it different?
Yeah. I think you're right. I don't think it's tough. So I mean, I guess are we all three sold or not? I'm not completely sold yet on if Biden's even actually going to run. It looks like that. It looks like the boulder is, the snowball is rolling down and it's getting bigger though. It does look
I'm still
like
saying he
it's
doesn't. I'm betting money that he doesn't run.
well.
I'm telling you one thing: the Gavin Newsom cross country trip, and all his stops and chats and stuff like that. They're testing the waters to see
Yeah.
the response to Gavin Newsom, because they're going to put Gavin Newsom in, and Biden's going to step down.
Now, what do you think about Gavin Newsom? And I actually had this written down. Gavin Newsom as VP
With Biden on
with Biden.
I mean, maybe. I mean, yeah, I could see that being a strategy, right? To where it's like, well, if we can just, give Biden his next win and then whatever, I could see that. The TV just went off. I think I'm still good here, but yeah, and I lost my train of thought there. Okay, so here's what I was going to say. So Gavin Newsom, I know we talk about him a lot, but this guy is growing in popularity and influence, and it's Joe Rogan, right? And everybody is halfway waiting to see what Joe Rogan thinks about everything. He's always making comments about DeSantis. It's kind of like either what Roger or Josh said. Well, we'll see how he does. No, it's Roger. He's good in Florida, but how does that apply to other things? I think Joe Rogan's actually kind of said the same thing. But Joe Rogan at heart is a Democrat. Okay, he's a Democrat. He's a conservative Democrat, but he's a Democrat. He's my kind of Democrat. If I'm going to get along with a Democrat, it's going to be somebody like him who's actually reasonable. But he wants to vote Democrat so bad, but he hates Gavin Newsom. Absolutely hates him. So I'm looking at, I'm watching the news out of the corner of my eye, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. looks like he's going to throw his hat into the ring. I could see Joe Rogan jumping on that train so fast your head would spin. Because RFK Jr. He's got that old Kennedy name. He's whatever. I could see Joe Rogan. I'm telling you, this time when he endorses a candidate, because he endorsed Bernie last time, and I think that got Bernie a lot of votes. Not last time he endorsed Bernie in the primary, and I think that got him a lot of votes. And I think that he's actually going to be somewhat of a influencer for this election. That's another thing that Democrats are doing. Kind of back to the point about how they're ahead of the game. They're already priming all the influencers that they think are going to make a difference, and I think that's interesting. They're so far ahead of the game on that, and I just don't. I don't know. I'd like to have a conversation with a few of our listeners about this who kind of have the inside track on some of this stuff, and just be like, what is up? What is going on? How come you guys can't just get with the times? There are so many young Republicans out there, intelligent, smart people, but I guess the money is just not comfortable with new and innovative ways of doing things. So I don't know. I think Josh has more to say, but I want to say this real quick. So I'm outside of Oklahoma City, Norman, Oklahoma. It's known for tornadoes. And man, I sent some video and pictures to Josh Rogers' giant wall cloud that was just spinning. You could see it spinning like a little tiny miniature hurricane. I'm like, man, is this thing going to touch down? And I'll put it to you this way. I'm in a hotel, right? And there are my people and there are people that are not my people. And the majority of the people in this hotel are not my people, because you know what they're doing? They're inside in the hotel lobby, gathered around the TV, looking at the meteorologist saying, well, it looks bad here. And they're waiting for the hotel, the not the manager, but the person at the front desk to tell them what to do. Meanwhile, Me, a dude from Kansas, and another dude from Oklahoma are out in the parking lot talking about it and looking at the wall cloud. It's like, yeah, man, we're out here, we're looking at it. We're not chasing it or anything, even though those are my people too. But man, you got to get out and look at that stuff, man. Don't be scared.
I know you
All
should
these
be
people, you,
recording with the wall cloud in the background outside.
yeah, no, the sound
Yeah,
quality would be bad. The sound quality would be bad, Roger. And you know how our listeners hate bad sound quality. Remember that?
yeah.
Lord.
And our
So yeah.
production team complains every time they have to edit some of that stuff out.
Dude, they suck.
so so anyway, there's still a tornado warning here. It's old hat, but I just watching those things happen, I'd rather see it with my own eyes than trust some meteorologist, because how often are they right? So if you hear a few sirens or whatnot in the background, it's all good. Lukester's all good. So Josh, I know you had way more to say on that stuff, and you look like you're about to jump in 3 or 4 times. Not on the tornado, on the candidates and all that.
No, no, I will say on the tornado, yeah, like that's one of the things. Like when hurricanes would roll into Florida, but that's when you had a hurricane party, like outside. That's when you went to the beach and you watched that sucker come in. As long as they would let you be there, before the before law enforcement would force you out, you got out there, man, and watched it. Watch that thing roll in. It's awesome. I don't know. I've always been a big fan of like really, really bad weather like that.
Well,
It's
maybe it's
exciting.
maybe it's a that's a Darwin thing, but here I am. I'm nearly 50 years old. I mean, I'm still alive. But yeah, I mean, those are my people, man. The hurricane party people, the people who don't just like immediately seek shelter. When you don't see what's coming, it's like maybe it's better to be outside and getting a 360-degree view instead of being inside the hotel lobby waiting for the Marriott desk guy to get word from his manager on what they should do. It's like, dude, are
Yeah,
you? But that, you know what? You know what, Josh? You posted a memory right there on Facebook today. You said something like 90% of Americans don't deserve freedom, right? And you posted "still true as ever" or something like that. It's not that they don't deserve it; they don't want it. I think we talked about it this last week. They don't want it; they just want to be told what to do.
and therefore they don't deserve it.
Agree. Touche. Good point.
So yeah, on the candidate piece, it's gonna it's gonna come down to the messaging, and I don't have any faith in the current in the current GOP. That they're gonna get that right, because they fail, they continue to fail, and right now I'm just going into 20. I'm gonna go into 2024 with my mantra of expect everyone to do their best and fail miserably. uh, and if you go in with that, man, then you'll never be let down. But Roger brought it up, and I wanted right. So we're talking about the economy a little bit. We're kind of dancing around it, but the labor market. So Meta just came out today, said they're laying off 4,000 people. I believe they either did it today or they're doing it here tomorrow, right? And Rogers said this a couple times, and I think he's spot on. Is the labor market is the only thing keeping the economy afloat right now. That's it, right? We still have inflation. It's still over 6%, probably more like upper 7% year over year, right? The price of gas, the average price of gas in Maricopa County is now $5 a gallon. Eggs are still $8 a dozen, right? It's everywhere. It's in your face. As you said, Luke, but there's some other things on the horizon right now that are going to make it worse outside of the labor market, and that is countries getting away from the dollar as the world reserve currency. And so one of our listeners, we asked for some questions on Slack, and the Slack channel is really grown. It's really growing. I think we got what, it's like 28, 30 people in there now. You know, and we get it. Some are more active than others, and that's fine. We understand everybody can't be active all the time, and people have lives, that don't revolve around C3, and we forgive them for right now. But they need to get their act together, and give C3 some more love. But with the the de-dollarization, we know that, especially after the continued invasion of Ukraine by Russia last year, when we tried to we They moved to kick them out of SWIFT. Russia and China have been talking about moving away from the petrodollar, and it looks like that is actually starting to gain some traction, not only between them but in BRICS. And so one of our listeners in the in the Slack group, uh, Gary, was like, "Hey, talk about BRICS, and if they move away from the dollar, what does that look like?" Um, and how fast will it happen? So, for those who may not be familiar with BRICS, BRICS is it's an economic trade group: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Some other members, and we kind of touched on this an episode or 2 episodes ago. I can't remember, about some other members joining BRICS, namely like Mexico, um, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and a few others. So BRICS has now come out and talked about establishing a BRICS currency, and getting away from the dollar. Obviously, if they do that, the dollar loses value, and it's going to be bad for us. So really, who benefits from a BRICS currency? A little bit of reading and stuff, and again, we'll waive topic here because this is a complex issue, and it's not something that we can really off the top of our heads talk about. So some of this stuff is wave top, and I'll say a few things, and I'm going to kick it over to Roger for his thoughts. Um, so really, Russia and India would be really the two biggest beneficiaries, from a common currency, that would be used within BRICS. Because when you look at it, after the wall fell, we were the lone superpower. It was a unipolar world, and we were it. Now it's kind of a multipolar world, and we are not the biggest dog on the block anymore in a lot of things. So really, New Delhi, Moscow, and Beijing, they're on the stage now with us, and they're going to control a lot of things, and it's not going to be all positive for the U.S. and our economy. So, they're talking about creating a BRICS currency that when that Russia and everybody all that are in BRICS would be trading in, that that is not the dollar. That's massive when you start looking at the economies of those of those countries, specifically obviously China and India. India is it's a massive economy. India is actually getting ready, if they haven't already. They have overtaken China as the most populous country in the world. I think China is 1.4 billion. India is like 1.47 or 1.49 billion, and so India's economy is coming along. They tried to decouple from China, here last year, but they can't do it. Obviously, we know they have their ties to Russia through a lot of their arms deals, and they also have a lot of oil and fossil fuel trading with Iran. So there's a lot of benefit for them going to a BRICS currency. But the one detractor, the one thing that's going to give India pause is going to be, do they want to be economically aligned with China, especially with their territorial dispute that they have going on, uh, up in the mountains, where they're fighting each other with sticks and bricks and tossing each other off cliffs and stuff like that, which is actually kind of awesome. That's really going to be the deciding factor. Do they want to become economically, coupled with China after they just try to decouple from them? So it's interesting, but it's something that really needs to be watched because our foreign policy sucks. Anthony Blinken's terrible. We've covered that in a lot of episodes. And so, Roger, when do you think when do you think the bottom's going to drop out of the economy with the labor market? Because I think it's going to happen. And two, how fast do you think, after that happens and the economy starts tanking, how fast do you think that some of this stuff that's gained a little traction now, like with BRICS stepping away from the US dollar, as a world reserve currency, how fast do you think that will happen, if it will happen at all?
I think our labor market's probably good through the fall. I think that's where you really start to see the bottom fall out of that. And I think it's because right now, the thing that's keeping the labor market where it's at is inflation. That's why people are working. Um, the dollar doesn't take you as far as it used to, so people are out there looking for jobs. And I'm in this industry where with labor rates, and I see it. And dude, we're paying a lot of money for some questionable skilled labor, right? So I think it's going to be, at least for the next quarter, when it comes. And again, like you said, and what I kept saying, that's the only thing holding this ship afloat right now is the labor market. Period. And it becomes a catch-22 because the lower the labor market, the more people are spending, the hotter the economy, the more the Fed has to jump in. We talked about earlier today, the Fed possibly doing another 50-point basis hike and this and that. And I don't think they're going to be that aggressive. I think they're looking at quarter bumps, from here on out. You got to rip the Band-Aid off somewhere, and really, I just wouldn't have done anything and just let it work itself out. But I think the labor market, you're probably looking at least first quarter 2024 is would be my educated guess. When it comes to the dollar, here's the thing about the dollar and currency in general is that countries don't just have to pick one. They can use a majority. Now, the reason why people use the US dollar is a couple of different reasons. One, we hold a lot of debt. And when you hold a lot of debt and we're paying in dollars, guess what? You tend to take the dollar. The other thing that we do is, well, I shouldn't say that we do, but the dollar is seen as stable. It's kind of like, hey, if you'd owned Afghan currency, 15 years ago, guess what that's worth? Zero, right? People don't want that currency they're holding to be worth nothing. So you have to pretty much go with some type of world power. When you look at Russia and China, they've always been, hey, there should be a one world currency that is not necessarily backed by a nation, kind of like the euro, right? Go with a euro, but a worldwide currency, which could be the BRICS. That could be an entry into that. China's a little bit different because they manipulate their currency and they peg it, and they've pegged their currency, I think, since like the mid early 90s. And what that means is they basically sell their currency and buy foreign currency because they want their currency to be cheaper. They want their currency to be cheaper because it makes exports cheaper, right? That's why we're like, hey, we buy everything from China because it's a lot cheaper. A dollar will buy more. So, I don't think you have any danger going to the yuan. What you do have to worry about, though, is, and that's pretty interesting, Josh, with the BRICS currency, because that could be something where, again, I don't think they ever go away from the dollar just because of the amount of money and the amount of debt. But you know what? I mean, would we say the BRICS was valued at over $4 trillion as of what, 5, 6, 7 episodes ago? No telling what that's going to be this time next year. And you start to get some major players like Russia, like China, like India. You get some of those Middle Eastern countries there that start to invest in the BRICS currency or whatever when it comes out. I mean, there could be a serious challenge to the dollar, at that point. The question is that currency going to be pegged like, what China does to its own yuan, or, is going to be fiat, which is, what U.S. currency is based off of, which is purely faith, right? And that's kind of how that's how the world got to using the dollar, not only just being a superpower, but back in, before what Bretton Woods, when we were purely on the gold standard, we had most of the gold in the world. Right. So it was easy to go in the dollar. We've just kind of, I think the world's just kind of been on that standard since, the 30s or whatever. But I definitely see and you know what, you take it farther than that. You take it farther than that and look at crypto. You don't even have to, I mean, I don't even know what the crypto market is valued at right now in its totality. But, I think they had some major setbacks, obviously. I mean, they really, uh, what's his name, Sam, SBF or whatever. They really, they don't understand that they hurt that industry as a whole and set it back for probably a decade at least, because there was a time period there where cryptocurrency was really gaining a lot of traction, and people were starting to use it and people were starting to put faith in it because it's all faith. Again, going back to fiat currency, that's been set back with a couple of, high profile events that's happened over the last year. But, that could be, that could also be a way forward, is that cryptocurrency starts to play a much greater role. I mean, we've reported a couple times that I think it's Sacramento and a couple other cities that are actually starting to accept cryptocurrency for payment. So, going back to answer Josh's question, I'll kick it over to Luke. I don't know, the dollar never goes away, I don't think, But I think what you do see happening is crypto steps back up. You're already seeing Bitcoin back up over 30K, I think. And I think you do see that other, maybe brick style currency or what have you.
I'm seeing something different than what Josh just posted. That's Bitcoin. Well, not even Bitcoin. It's a little bit more than that. But what I'm seeing, and whatever. This is just a simple Google search. Is the total market cap for cryptocurrency, and it's obviously an estimate. I may lose power, guys. So just so you know, global cryptocurrency market cap today is 1.26 trillion, and that would include everything. Now, look, dude, it could be less than that, but they're saying that the market cap for Bitcoin is nearly 600 billion. So that would be the majority of it. But who knows, man? It's really hard to tell what the entire market cap is. But I'm glad you brought up cryptocurrency.
Which, by the way, is so U.S. currency in circulation is about 2.324 trillion.
Well, that's crazy, right? Is that how much is in circulation, or?
Yeah, that's how much in circulation. So there's obviously some paper that's not in circulation.
Well,
it's like,
I'd say the majority of it's not in circulation. Well, the majority of it's not in circulation.
Yeah.
This is my point. Is I'm not an expert on all this. I'm not an expert on anything actually, but I do kind of read trends, and a lot of times I think that Josh and Roger are the same. We read trends and we kind of look at the long game, and all this stuff. Crypto is market cap is 1.26. There's 3 point whatever billion in circulation, but circulation for our currency. I don't know if we talked about this on the show. Maybe just the three of us have talked about it offline. But it's like, what does that really mean, circulation? U.S. Treasury. Okay, we added this much to the debt. They didn't print $1 trillion. They didn't do that. All they did was inject it into the system via electronic means. That's all they did. Boom. We just created this much money. Now there's this many more dollars. I mean, people got to get it through their heads. The 3.2 trillion, I'd say a very small portion of that is actual physical paper money. So going back to, the BRICS currency or our currency or what we're going to move to, I'm telling you, all of this is just a natural slide, a natural step to a digital currency. We're basically already there anyway. And anybody who wants to fight it, it's like, nah, I'm always going to have my cash money, my fold money in my pocket. Come on. We talked about it earlier. It's like, when's the last time you saw a pay stub? When's the last time you got a check? Well, I got a check recently. But when's the last time you got it? But you know what I did with that check? That check I got? I endorsed it. I took a picture of it, and now it's in my bank account. Did that money actually exist? Like in any real terms, did it exist? No. It's all just a fiat. We have all decided to agree that this is the value of something we can exchange for goods and services. And it's a matter of time before there will still be your occasional dollars and physical money that you can touch, but this is all going electronic. And I'm not going to say it's going to go crypto, but the best way to do a digital currency where that's the basis of that's your currency, you have to do some sort of blockchain. Unless somebody can come up with something better, blockchain's the way to go. So I think we're on our way. It's just who's going to adopt it first, who's going to jump head first into it and be like, okay, that's what I worry about BRICS. You get a bunch of countries together and be like, okay, here's what our currency is. It's digital and it's blockchain, and you can exchange it just like anything else. And if they do it first, there's going to be a lot of catching up to do. But there's a lot of smarter people than us thinking about this and working on it. Well, maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But I think we've talked about it before. The Fed moving to digital currency, but a federal digital currency, investing on that early. And I was listening to something somebody was saying. As a hedge, just a hedge, the U.S. government should be buying Bitcoin, just as a hedge. If nothing else, just as a hedge. So what? How many billions of dollars have we sent to Ukraine in the past year? Why don't you take just like 1% of that and just hedge a little bit on Bitcoin or some sort of crypto, just in the entire crypto market, a growth fund or something. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I just sent some more to Ukraine yesterday when I paid my taxes.
Exactly.
We're we all just send some more to Zelensky. He needs a new Lambo.
So I don't know the Ukraine thing. It's already okay. So Ukraine now, you know, just based on the amount of money we're sending over there, the amount of money we will. I think that Ukraine has surpassed Afghanistan in a very short amount of time. As far as Americans just don't, they don't care that their tax dollars are going there. It just is. You know, Afghanistan became a huge, tax suck. Probably in what year? Where Americans just stopped paying attention. Not necessarily what was going on there, but the fact that so much money was being spent there. We've already reached that in Ukraine. I would say it took at least 10 years in Afghanistan for it to get to that point where people just didn't even think about their tax dollars going there anymore, even though there was so much money being spent in Afghanistan. I mean, this is just the new normal, man. I
Yeah.
don't see, and DeSantis, boy, he came out not against Ukraine, but he came out about and said something about there being a roadmap. It's got to be an end game, and all of a sudden he's a Putin sympathizer. You don't support Ukraine? It's like, man, I mean, Josh, are we there? Are we there to where it's like, well, this is just the new normal. We're just going to be sending minimum $500 billion to Ukraine every year. And before I say that, I'm not even going to cover the ground we've covered before about degrading Russia's military, how that's a good thing. But I really think that is not the prime mover, the prime motivator for doing this in Ukraine is degrading the Russian military. I do not think that. I don't think that's the prime motivator.
No, I don't think that's a prime motivator either. Because after watching the Russian military perform, I don't think you really needed to degrade them at all. They're not that good. They're just simply not that good. And we figured that out. We figured out that Russian order of battle and Russian equipment sucks ass in Desert Storm because all the Iraqis' armor, all of their artillery, all of their stuff, it was all Russian. Their order of battle is all based on Russia. And guess what? It sucked. And for people to expect different, in Ukraine, I don't understand why. I do believe that a lot of us, and I think I even said it too, and I was wrong, that Russia was going to take, they were going to take Kyiv in 72 hours. 72, 96 hours. I really did. I really believe that they were going to do that simply because of the numbers, not because they were really good, but simply because of the numbers. That obviously was not the case. It didn't happen. And so I think a lot of people, made Russia out to be this, this military superpower, this monstrosity, and it's not so. And so for this to continue to degrade their, so we can degrade their military, that's not a viable excuse because their military wasn't that good to begin with. I think, and again, this is where the black pill comes in. I think that the reason we are so heavily involved is because Zelensky knows where the bodies are buried when it comes to key members of the United States government. And the fact that Ukraine, and this is no secret, and this is not because, it doesn't make me a Putin lover or, anything like that, because Ukraine has long been the laundry machine for US taxpayer dollars to find its way back into the coffers of our political leadership. And that's just fact. That is a well established fact. That's why Sam Bankman-Fried. That's why that guy didn't even have a chance to turn himself in or to give that interview that he was going to give the day or two before he was arrested before they swooped in and snatched him up. Because Sam Bankman-Fried had the opinion of, oh well, if I'm going down, I'm taking all of you with me, and there was no way they were letting him get in front of a microphone. No way. Because when you go back and you look at where a lot of his money came from, a lot of his money came from Ukraine. Now, how did Ukraine get that money? Well, because we gave it to them. And then it got laundered right back into, and on both sides of the aisle. Both sides of the aisle are guilty of it. So I think that's the main reason that we're in Ukraine, and I think that, one of the other reasons is that war is good for the U.S. economy. Eisenhower warned us about the military industrial complex. The military industrial complex is alive and well, and war is good for the U.S. economy. Raytheon can't make money unless, their missiles are getting shot at people. They can't do they don't make money. So I think that's I think that's the two big reasons that that were there. And I wish people would pick one. It's kind of like the weapons of war. Like your AR-15 won't do anything against the U.S. military, but on the other hand, they're also weapons of war, and they don't belong in the hands of civilians. It's like people are like, well, we have to fight Russia. We have to stop Russia here in Ukraine, or they'll take over Europe. And then on the other hand, it's, well, Russia can't even take Ukraine. You're like, okay, well, if they can't even take, Eastern Ukraine, they're not going to take the continent of Europe. So why do we need to give them all our money? Like, I don't understand that. It's just, it's not logical. So, but I do agree that people got there a lot faster on Ukraine than they did, than they did Afghanistan, largely because we goes back to that messaging piece. The left specifically, and some on the right, the likes of Lindsey Graham and these other idiots, have pushed and they have messaged very well every time they get in front of a camera. We must support Ukraine. We must support Ukraine. It's a fight against the evils of Putin, and Putin is an evil dude. But it's been messaged very well. Nobody was saying that shit in Afghanistan in year 12. I would say half of Americans didn't even realize we were still in Afghanistan in 2015. A lot of people, I literally had people ask me, and these are good Americans. I mean, these are, these are God-fearing, Americans. When we pulled out of Afghanistan and that debacle happened, I literally had a couple people ask me that, hey, I didn't realize we still have people there. Right. And so, it goes back to that, that saying. It was, kind of, I think the late 2000s, maybe early, 2010s. It was like, America's not at war. The military's at war. America's at the mall. And, that's really where we were with Afghanistan. They've just kept Ukraine in the news. They've been able to keep Ukraine in the news, because idiots like Brad Paisley go over. And Brad Paisley, they took pictures of him getting a briefing from Zelensky on the situation in Ukraine. I'm like, what? Is Brad Paisley some kind of foreign policy or military expert that I'm not aware of? Because all I thought he did was make shitty country songs. Like, legit, that's all he did. And next thing you know, they're like, Brad Paisley receives a briefing from Zelensky on the situation in Eastern Ukraine. I'm like, what? Why am I sending like, what is happening? And the fact that every celebrity, and their grandma have been over to Eastern Ukraine, bro, I didn't see that many celebrities come to Iraq or Afghanistan. You know why? Because
I know why.
why?
Because Hamid Karzai doesn't smell good.
Well, no. To be fair, nobody in Afghanistan smells good. They all smell like really really bad feet. I had this one guy. He would pick his toes. He would pick his toenails in the meats. And this dude, his toenails looked like those big Fritos, like the dip size Fritos. They looked exactly like them. They were all yellow and gangrenous. Dude, it was absolutely it was disgusting.
And this is it. So for those of you who haven't been to Afghanistan, there's a few of y'all. But when you're meeting with these folks, you establish rapport with them, right? You establish a lot of rapport. And in the Afghan, if you're not into the game of gay chicken, if y'all never heard of gay chicken, if you're not into gay chicken, the rapport is not going to go as far as you want it to with an Afghan, because man, when these people really trust you, brother, you know it, because you'll be in a meeting and they'll, once you establish that certain level of rapport, they'll want to sit next to you. That's where it starts. Instead of across the table, it's like, no, I'm going to sit next to you this time. And then as you establish more and more rapport, brother, they get in your space a lot. And if you're really good rapport, if you're watching YouTube right now, you will be conducting the meeting with your arm around a dude, and their head will be right here, and like almost like a little baby or something, like right on your shoulder. And It's just, and yeah, and then there's those Frito toenails. That's what I'm saying. So I'm
It was
imagining
disgusting.
Josh getting very intimate with those.
This dude would sit right next to me and pick his Frito toenails, and not only would he pick his big, Fritos dip sized toenails, then after that he would sit there and he would. 'Cause I had a pretty legit beard, and he would just sit there and he would stroke my beard as we chatted, about the local Taliban, the shadow governors, and where we could find them and all that stuff.
And
Like
then
it was,
did,
it
and then
was
did you
disgusting.
and did you break bread together?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
come
dude.
on. The
Get
things we
some
did for our country.
get some naan and some goat and some rice. Yeah, man. Sit there and you're just like the whole time you're just sitting there like, man, I just need some hand sanitizer right now. Like I could really use some hand sanitizer right now. And a bag of lye, to crawl in and cleanse myself. It was disgusting. I know Roger experienced the exact same thing.
I was going to say, I think we have probably all three of us spent our fair share of personal funds on shampoo, soap, deodorant, anything that sprayed that smelled better than what they were going to smell like when they came into that meeting tent. I mean, some of it was, we had a guy that would literally give me headaches. He smelled so bad. I think Ted was with me on this one back in the day, and he smelled so bad he would give you headaches. And the first day that we met, we put the fan behind us to blow that way. It's like, okay, it was bearable. And then, we had a meeting tent or whatever. So the next time we met the guy, we come in, he puts the fan behind him. So I'm sitting there. Shortest meet ever, dude. I think we were together for like 12 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, man, I can't do this.
Did I tell you guys about the Afghan? He was fairly westernized. Um, he was actually trained in Moscow at the KGB school. This guy was a no joke. Like he was no joke. Spoke English pretty well. Kept himself fairly clean, but whatever. So you can hear the tornado alarms in the background. Apparently, there's half a dozen on the ground around Norman. So you see the lights flickering and stuff. But so no, this guy, we would have frank conversations because I wanted to learn, and I'm like, so bro, you guys smell bad. You don't smell bad, but the people you work with do. I know you can smell it, especially after spending so much time in Moscow. And he's like, well, yeah, everybody smells different. And his theory was it's because of obviously it's because of hygiene. That's number one. But number two is because of the food they eat. The food gets into your system and you excrete a certain odor. And I was like, oh, well, what do we smell like? He's like, oh, dude, you're pungent. And I'm like, I'm pungent? And I'd taken a shower that morning. I was like, I'm pungent? Really? He's like, oh, yeah, I can smell it. Every time we meet, it's not totally disgusting, but you smell. You have a very distinct odor. All Americans do. And I was like, well, what do we smell like? He said, I'll never forget this. He said, you smell like milk and meat. I was like, milk and meat, huh? Like sour milk? He's like, no, not sour milk, but just like milk, like cow's milk. It's a very strong cow's milk odor and just meat. I'm like what kind of meat? And he's like, because beef is not a thing there, but they do have beef there, but it's rare, like lamb is in the States. You can find lamb, but it's rare, and so it's a very distinct odor to them. And they're like, oh, it's like cow meat. It's like cow meat and cow milk. And I'm like, no joke. And he's like, yeah. I mean, I was like, well, what can I do? He's like, nothing. He's like, nothing. There's nothing you can do. He's like, I'm just going to smell you. So I got that end of it. And I was like, that is very, very interesting. I was like, all Americans? He's like, every one of them. When y'all are walking through the market, we can smell you. It's interesting, right?
That's legit. I've never thought about it. Really, I've never had anybody say that. But it is
They were just
interesting,
too
and it makes
polite.
sense. Yeah,
They're
probably.
like,
Yeah,
these
absolutely.
Americans smell like shit. They smell awful.
Yeah.
It smells like they bathe in milk and, dry off with slabs of beef, which
Yeah.
sounds
I
nice.
love
I
it.
mean, it sounds kind of nice. So,
Hormone
end of the world,
laden
Roger.
beef.
Yeah. So, Leave It to Beaver wants to know when the world's going to collapse. So,
You know what? It's on its way. Well, what happens is it just becomes unrecognizable to us, right? As you get older, and our parents said it, and our parents' parents, and it's kind of like the army. You can only do a certain amount of years after 20 because the culture just changes so much that it forces you out, right? You can't accept the change. You can't cope with the change. You don't want to change. the change becomes too drastic, and then you're just old school, and then you're forced out, and that's what happens. Now of course, what's different now is we're living longer, and 50 is the new 30, and such and so forth. So I think we are going to be a lot more relevant to society and culture than what maybe our parents were, and our grandparents. But going back to like the Ukraine thing, I mean that's one of the thing the leaked doc shows. Not only now that they've caught the guy, the airman, but there were a lot of countries that did not support our aid to Ukraine and didn't want to support it themselves, right? I mean, you can start off with Hungary. You can, you go down Turkey, who's playing the middleman. I think there were some countries in the Middle East as well. There were a lot of countries there, and that showed that hey, that's why they were such a push by the left, and then the conservatives jumped on it to show this unified front against Russia. They had to sell it hard to the American people because the rest of the world didn't buy it. I shouldn't say the rest of the world. A lot of countries in the world didn't buy it and still don't buy it. And we had to do a lot of influencing to get buy-in with a lot of these folks. But it comes down to the money. And I think, whether it was Luke or Josh that said it, with the money that we're sending to them, we're going to continue to send it because they don't care. They don't care because right now our national debt is over $30 trillion. And McCarthy just introduced a debt limit increase of $1.5 trillion. Now, here's the other side to that. And I'll get your thoughts on it, Josh. Here's the other side of that. Biden released his budget, which sucks. But going back to what you said with Obamacare, have you seen the budget the GOP released?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
You know why? Because they haven't released one. It's like, what the heck? They haven't released one. That's why you haven't seen one. And then, the CBO says that actually raising taxes is more effective at cutting the limit of reducing the debt than spending cuts. It's absolutely insane because they value no money because, again, going back to the tax thing, it's a blank check. And like we said about 2 years ago, and I read this in like a political article, but it's getting to where it was just to the left, but now it's the left and the right. There was no intention to pay off the national debt. Debt to them is nothing. It doesn't matter anymore to these folks.
No, it doesn't, and it has it for a while. For a while, it's a talking point. It's a talking point. When Bush, when W raised the national debt, I remember Obama getting up there, and Obama's like, the fact that we're talking about this today is a failure of leadership. And then the next thing you know, under Obama, guess what we're doing? We're raising the debt. And so it's maddening because they're going to continue, because it's like, we talked about this a little bit, right? It's like the machine that we work for, back in the day when we were still in uniform. It wants more. It wanted more 10 minutes ago. It wants more right now, and it's going to want more 10 minutes from now. It just wants more, and it's going to continue to, to want that. And it's going to get to a point where people are going to be taxed to death, because you cannot continue to spend more than you take in. You just simply can't do it. I mean, that's just basic math, and anybody who passed first grade knows that. If we have enough money to be giving foreign countries, guess what? You have enough money that you can cut taxes.
Our
If you're
national debt
funding,
right now is $31 trillion, $31.5 trillion.
absolutely insane. I do know in Biden's budget that he proposed it's the largest budget for the Department of Defense in history. Right. And what is the left campaigned on, for forever is, you know, get rid the DOD doesn't need money. DOD doesn't need money. It's all about, that should go into social programs. And here you have Biden proposing the largest Department of Defense budget in history. And again, if I knew my money was going to a good cause, if I knew they were going to be that, elected officials were going to be good stewards of our money, It would still suck, but maybe it would make it a little easier. The fact that you know the shit's going to be wasted just makes it worse. The fact you know the fact that you know it's going to be wasted is going to be sent to countries like Ukraine. It's going to be sent to Pakistan for gender studies. Really? You think they're doing a whole lot of gender equality in Pakistan? No, not even remotely close. It's just it's getting wasted, and that just that absolutely drives me nuts. But again, the GOP doesn't have an answer. One of the reasons, and somebody alluded to this the other day, and I can't remember where it was, but it was. Remember when Lindsey Graham fist bumped Kamala on the Senate
Hmm.
floor? I
Disgusting.
forget which here. I
Disgusting.
forget which I forget which Supreme Court justice hearing that way. It might have been Kavanaugh's or Gorsuch. I can't remember. But when I saw that, it was like, this is all kabuki theater. They'll get up when the cameras are on, they're giving their speeches and, they're going into their talking points about how, the other side is evil and this, that, and the other. But when those cameras aren't on them, they're hanging out together, they're going drinking together, they're going to dinner together, and they're laughing. They're laughing because they know they have more than half of the US population snowballed and completely convinced. And it's truly maddening. We do not have a government for the people. We don't. We absolutely don't. And we have it for probably a very long time, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I just don't know where the. That's why I say often I'm in incrementalism. I believe in that, and little baby steps, right? Baby steps. How do we, I don't know if the rubber band's going to snap back so quick, but the rubber band snaps back in slow motion. But maybe that's just a pipe dream. Maybe that's just a hopeful thing because a government for the people, nah, nah. I'm with you there. It's like, so I guess my point is, at what point does that start to change? I don't know. I don't see an off ramp yet. It's just, back to our earlier point, man, I don't see how there can be a significant change with the power structures that are in place. And not enough people care. Not enough people care. I just don't. Go ahead.
So sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. So I think it changes. One, it's going to have to be a significant emotional event, but I think it's going to come down to, and we're seeing it already, and we talked about it, the balkanization, right? And I think the balkanization right now is good because people in blue states, you need to get out of blue states, and you need to get to red states. Um, but I think it will change, and we may see it 15, 20 years from now. But I think when you see blue states or red states, whichever one, that control natural resources for other states, when they start dictating those natural resources, and I'll use, let's say, Tennessee and Georgia for example, right? So I believe it's the Little Tennessee River that basically feeds water to Georgia. If Tennessee, let's say Tennessee goes all California, and Tennessee decides that they're shutting the water off to the state of Georgia, that's when I think you start to see some significant change. But I think that change comes in the form of violence, unfortunately. Like I really do. Um, but I think that's when I think that's only, I think it's the time you will only see, significant change. Um, is when natural resources start to get involved. That because other than that, it's the people who are going to be comfortable living in California are going to continue living in California, and they're going to continue to dictate, try and dictate, well, the rest of the country should do this and that, until it becomes untenable for people to live in whatever state they're in. And then when those states start shutting off natural resources to other states, that's when I think you'll see um, some change. Like if Colorado decided they were going to shut down, close up the Hoover Dam, right? They're like, hey, we're closing the gates on this thing, and you other states that rely on the Colorado River for water, hey man, hope it rains. Hope it rains for you. We're good. So I don't know, Roger. That's kind of what I think is going to take some real change. But I could be completely wrong.
Well, and I think you are starting to see that balkanization of it, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, everybody talks about it's like, oh, it's bad. It's like, hey, there's a reason why we have different states. And there's a reason why we have different, state governments and different governors and legislatures and this at the state level, because it allows each state, wherever you're at, to vote people in the office into office to enforce and act, pass legislation that is conducive to your lifestyle and what you want to do within the framework of the state's constitution and then the U.S. Constitution. So the problem is, and you hit it on the head. Not just natural resources. The problem is when you have somebody in California that wants to tell me in Arizona how to live. It's like, I tell you what, why don't you live your way in California? And I'm fine with that. I don't want your crap here anyway. Let me do me out here. And so I don't think the balkanization, it's not a bad thing. Hey, man, New Yorkers, Chicago, you're getting what you, Fetterman, good Lord, we saw that clown show up in a sweatshirt and shorts, to the Capitol. It's like, you know what? I'm actually not even angry anymore. I'm just like, you're getting Pennsylvania. You are getting exactly what you voted for. That is your representative. And then I think you kicked out the video earlier today when he sat on the subcommittee for, what is it, SNAP and whatever the other food thing is.
Oh Lord,
Dude, that is painful to watch. One, I feel almost embarrassed for the dude, but it's just painful.
I don't know how people actually sat there and listened to him.
I
would
would need closed caption.
I would have got him walked out.
Yeah, I would need closed caption. Like for Fetterman, no, I'm like, I actually need closed caption to understand what you're saying because I'm not getting it. But point being, hey man, that's why we have different states. Balkanize it. You're going to live the way you want, but like you said, with the resources and just culture in general, it's like, hey, you want to live your way, that's fine, but don't come and dictate how we live our way, how we live here.
Yeah.
What's weird with Arizona right now, because Katie Hobbs won as the governor, and she's the third least popular governor already in the country. But Ted brought this up years ago, and he was talking about he opined that maybe the founding fathers just wanted complete standstill, where everything was just locked up and nothing can get done. And that's what they wanted. And that's kind of the best way forward. And, I'm kind of subscribing to that because here in Arizona, we have a red legislature through and through. It's getting closer, but for the most part, it's all red. It's dominated red. Katie Hobbs just vetoed her 63rd bill. So she's already broke the record. She broke Janet Napolitano's record that she did in 4 years. She's already broke it in the first 3 months or whatever. And some of these, they actually had a supermajority that they were bipartisan bills. But what's not happening? Or what is happening? Nothing. Nothing crazy is getting passed. Democrats don't have control. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there's some things that I would like to see passed on the right side of the house. But, we're already permitless carry. Property taxes were already voted down. That's done at the county level. The state, Doug Ducey, when he left, he already got rid of the military retirement tax. So a lot of that stuff that I wanted was already done. So now it's like, hey, man, if we could just maintain this, I'm fine with that. I'm not even sure that, she's going to be a lame duck governor. I think I'm actually fine with that. I don't even know if I want to recall her in 3 months because nothing's getting done one way or another. It's just, hey, all the good things kind of went into place and that's where it is, and maybe that's the whole point with the federal government. You just get to a standstill to where just nobody does anything. At least you don't have any more crazy things. I mean, I'll throw it to you, Luke, with the Fetterman thing and whatever else you want to talk about. But, when you see what's being proposed, Josh hit me, he beat me to the punch with the credit score, So yeah, you go with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, dude, you're subsidizing. You're going to be paying more. That is a fact. That is going to happen. I think that's got to be challenged, right? But now you look at the Title IX changes they're looking at, Title IX to start covering transgender students or transgender athletes and this and that. So, I mean, you look at a lot of this stuff, Luke. I mean, it's, maybe with that gridlock, well, nothing crazy passes. I mean, you may not get what you want, but nothing crazy from the left passes either, right?
Yeah. I mean, we said this back when, they were trying to confirm McCarthy. It's like, cool, man. Try to confirm him for the next 3 years, 2 years, whatever. Nothing's getting done. So let's address what's going on in the Slack right now. Chris is mad because he can't hear me well enough. It's like, well, dude, you get what you pay for. You know what I'm saying? So Josh, I want your thoughts on this. You get what you pay for. So it's like, could I upgrade my mic? Yeah, but like as much as I'm on the road, I'm not taking that nice mic with me everywhere. I probably should upgrade my mic. But at the end of the day, like, just so everybody understands, this is a hobby. The three of us have, talked long and hard. It's like, how much do we want to invest in this to, we want to grow? Do we even want that? So on and so forth. I mean, yeah, we do this because it's fun to talk to the three of us. It's fun to talk to the audience. It's fun to get feedback, even if it's on one on one. We wish y'all do it in social media. I wish this would be a conversation on, like, Twitter or Facebook or something like that. But it's just fun. It's fun to communicate. So it's like, yeah, uh, I think, did we discuss this on the podcast? Was this a conversation that me and Roger and Ted had? I can't remember. Josh, tell me if we had this conversation. It's like, I just, at this point, if I felt like, oh, we're going to move this over to Substack, it's going to be a subscription service, and you got to pay, $1, even $1 a month, so that we can, or $5 a month, so we can start an LLC or whatever. It costs a lot of money to do that. It's like, I just don't feel right. I feel like that if we brought it to a point where me personally, C1, the cup part of the equation here, whatever we are, to feel comfortable charging people, I feel like I would have to invest a significant amount of more, not just money. Money is minor. That's a new microphone. That's a couple $100, whatever. It's time. It's like we'd have to invest a lot more time in getting this to be something I would be comfortable charging someone, anybody, any one of our listeners to actually, listen to it. It's just we're not there. But at the other side of the coin, I feel like that. Tell me, Josh, if we talked about this on the podcast or not. That if I think we did, if someone was in need, like if one of our listeners was like, had a horrible situation, and needed to raise money for, like, a funeral or some healthcare expenses or something like that, and they just couldn't do it, without identifying the person, we might put out to everyone, hey, hey folks, we're going to set up a GoFundMe page. This is what's going on. One of our listeners, and we may do an entire episode, talking about that person or whatever. If you could spare some change, just head on over to this and, donate a little money. I am confident that our audience would raise a significant amount of money for a good cause like that. But we would have to take that very seriously to, not even charge, just to ask our listeners to pay anything for anybody. Because, I mean, I don't know. This is a hobby, and I probably should get a new mic. I understand that. But
We can go fund me
and
that.
Chris, yeah, Chris is all like, well, you got to make money, you got to spend money to make money. Believe me, bro, I completely understand that. But in this case, it's not the money, it's the time. Because if the three of us spent, you know, 3 hours a day, on the days we weren't recording, working on, what we're going to say, kind of writing it down, making a serious effort at the outline, all three of us are on the same page to be more professionalized, we could do it. And I do think that if we invested money, we could grow our audience by a huge margin. But bro, we just don't have the time. So Josh, I'm gonna kick that to you. I mean, I don't know. This is kind of a topic, kind of a very introspective, belly gazing type topic, but just so people know what's going through our heads while we're recording and when we do this stuff and all that.
Yeah, so here's the large part of it, right? So the large part of our listeners are people we personally know, right? They're people who we consider friends, and you know, I would feel, I would not feel right asking my friends to pay to hear me talk. I don't know. It's just because honestly, like I don't think I have that important of stuff to say, but in the same breath, that's why we started this, right? I mean, this is why we started this. Back during COVID, was like, hey man, we have some stuff to say, and we're gonna say it, and it's fun. It, I don't care if we don't pick up any more listeners than we have now. It's fine because again, this is therapeutic for me, and I'm speaking, Josh C1. For me personally, it's therapeutic. It's fun. It keeps me abreast on what's going on in the world and what's going on here in the country, and it also and we've all kind of gotten into it with each other and had some different point of views, but it also challenges my views on things and my opinions on things, based on you know things that you guys say, things that the listeners input and inject and stuff like that. So I enjoy it. right? From that piece. Now, if we were to start growing exponentially, then yeah, and I didn't know a whole lot of the people who listen to us. Sure, man. Hey, chip in a couple bucks and we will provide you more content. But that goes back to what Roger saying. That requires more time. Time is something and I know you guys don't either. I don't have a whole lot of spare time just laying around. I am busier than a one-legged man in an ass kicking contest, you know, day to day. And so, you're asking me to invest more time. Okay, I can invest more time, but that's going to require money because now I've got to take away, the time I'm spending to make money to come do this, which right now, we're not, we're not making a dime on. And so that's fine. It is, and as far as your mic goes, I mean, dude, we all started out with that very mic. When our last episode, I recorded with that mic that Luke's recording with now. So, I mean, it's not, it's a legit mic. It's a very, very popular mic, and we all had it, we all used it, and we, some of us have been able to upgrade, and but Luke travels a lot, and I would be very, very hesitant to travel with, a nice high end microphone because eventually the shit's going to get lost because you're checking it, in a bag on an airline, it's going to get lost. It may get jacked, or just normal wear and tear, man. That thing's going to get banged around and you're going to jack it up. So I'm good. And if some listeners out there, hey man, if you want to donate some money to C3, uh, you know, go ahead and you can donate it. Just just give us, by name, give it to us. You're not donating to C3, you're donating to Roger, Luke, and Josh. Because Roger's shaking his head no right now.
Don't
Roger's
donate
like,
to me.
just
My taxes can't. I can't take anymore.
he's got you're gonna push Roger into that next tax bracket. Um, where people, protest in front of his house talking about he needs to pay his fair share. Um, so it Yeah, man, I would love to make money doing this. Dude, I would love to make money doing this. Like make money, just sit around and bullshit and talk smack and drink some bourbon. That'd be amazing. But bro, I mean, it's I don't know that that'll ever happen. And like Luke kind of alluded to, I don't know that I want it to happen because your whole life changes. Your world changes, right? When you put yourself out there like that, and then a whole lot more people know who you are. And I don't know that I want a whole lot more people knowing who I am, because there's a reason. A lot of the big names have private armed security.
Yeah,
Um,
that's another one I think about, and I'm cut you off. You go straight to Roger if you were done, but is man, the cancel culture is a real thing, and the three of us have jobs, and I often think, I look at some of man when Josh goes unhinged on Twitter on the C3, I can always tell, and some of our listeners can tell when it's Josh too. Darren in particular, he's like, "Yep, I always know when it's Josh because I can tell it's at 5 in the morning." uh, you know, or 5 in the morning, and he's just he's just going crazy. And you posted one the other day, and I was like, "Whew, wow!" And I think some people commented on it in the Slack, and it always is like, is this going to piss somebody off enough to find out who I am and try to ruin my life? And that's not a call out on you. That's a call out on me and
no,
anything
it's
we
a fair
say in
point.
this anything we say on this show. It's just like, man, maybe something will hit viral, but like you said, is that something I really want? Am I at a place in my life where I want to go viral and automatically have half the nation against me and wanting to come after me? Because the left has a tendency to just try to truly destroy people. And, yeah, bro, that's a tough one. I think about that a lot, actually.
Yeah, and we do have a very, very small select group that again, you always want to grow. Um, but like Josh mentioned, like Luke mentioned, there are a lot of we have our private lives, right? And we have to try to keep our private lives private. And a lot of that is just due to yeah, dude, I had to get rid of my LinkedIn account. I had to get rid of my LinkedIn account because I was making just a generalization about something that somebody had posted, and somebody on the left came right into attack. And I'm like, dude, I don't need this. And I just, you know what, didn't respond, just deleted the whole account. because with cancel culture nowadays, that's the way it is. So, this is the only way we can keep our private lives private. But I think to lead off what Luke said is spot on. At the end of the day, we try to put out quality content. And it's about time. And the minute you start taking money, that all changes. Now you owe somebody something. Here we can kind of free will it. Josh can get hammered and slur his speech, and Luke can toke and do whatever, and and I have dogs barking in the background. It's a different ball game, because then at that point you owe it to your listeners to provide them premium content. But so we do the best we can, and we're nonprofit and probably be that way for a while. Uh, on that note, I kind of want to throw it around the horn for a last round here. So Fox News ended up settling with Dominion. So they went to court. I think Dominion was asking for $1.5 billion in defamation because of during the election. Fox News saying the election was stolen, Dominion equipment, some of the machines were rigged, this and that. Fox News ended up settling for $787 million. Now, it's a lot of money, right? It is a lot of money, but my guess is to Fox News Corp. I mean, I think they probably paid more out in sexual assault payouts, and over the last couple of years, than what they're paying to Dominion. But my question is, Josh, so to me, that sets a precedence. Now, granted, it hasn't gone to jury. It didn't go to jury, and they settled. And they settled because they thought they were going to lose, obviously. Um, but when you talk about Russian collusion, when you talk about Hunter Biden's laptop, the two biggest ones in the last couple of years, when does that come around? Because I think that sets precedence to me. And I think when you look at those, because it doesn't even have to be Donald Trump, when you look at those that were impacted or affected by any one of those stories, and it's not even just Fox, this here is just Fox News, the entire left mainstream media. When do we start seeing the first lawsuit, do you think, talking about, the Russian collusion and the laptop?
Well, if they have any moxie, you'll see those lawsuits drop this week, because as soon as Dominion filed against Fox, they should already been prepping those, right? On the chance, like, hey, if this thing goes through and Dominion wins, in court, or Fox settles, stuff like, whatever the case may be. But if Dominion gets, if they get money off this, then this is going to get dropped again. It goes back to that, that GOP thing. It's like, hey man, are you guys fighting, or what are y'all doing? And Jesse Kelly on Twitter calls them the low T, right? Low testosterone GOP. They're the low T. If I was, if I'm Carter Page, if I, shit, even Trump, but like you said, any of those that were impacted by, Russia collusion, you're a Russian, you're an agent for Russia, Hunter Biden laptop, all of these hoaxes, all of these things that have been, spread. And now Axios came out, I think it was today, this morning, or yesterday, and came out and was like, yep, the COVID-19 virus was, it came out of a Wuhan lab, right? How many people were canceled, lost their job, like, right? And then, called liars, and, China, xenophobic, because they said, hey, this thing probably came out of a lab in Wuhan. Those lawsuits should be dropping this week. Those should have been ready to go. But like, okay, because like you said, there's precedent now. So I think if you don't see it this week or next week, I don't know that you will. And it'll be just one more glaring example of how the right it just continues to fail in that arena. Because that, I mean, $787 million, man. I would love to have $787 million. Granted, now Fox News, hey man, that might be budget dust for them, right? I mean, Tucker's going to probably pull his show is probably going to pull in that, in the next 30 days, if not sooner. But that's still a significant amount of money. Now, when you start talking about individuals, right? You go after an Adam Schiff, you go after, somebody else. Hey man, I bet Adam Schiff ain't got $787 million to pay out. So I don't know. We'll see. I would like to see those lawsuits soon, though, man. I would.
It's just interesting they settled, right? that's just interesting to me because there's more behind the scenes with that guarantee. I mean, with this, all these corporations, media, and the implication of what an actual judgment would mean, for everyone involved. It's like, well, I guarantee you, Fox didn't just roll over and say, "Oh, it's all good. Yeah, we were wrong, and we're just going to pay you this money." It didn't happen like that. There were certain threats involved. They're like, "Hey, if we go through with this, you know what this means for everyone." So, yeah, $787 million. Yeah, you're gonna pony up a little bit of that. Maybe not, in your face, pony it up like somebody's going to cut them a check, but some deals were cut on that. I think for sure.
I think you're right.
One of our listeners, and I did, I thought the guy might have listened, like occasionally, but this dude rolled up on me the other day when we were at our slum house getting it ready to sell. He rolled up and I didn't even recognize him. I think it's early onset Alzheimer's. He rolled up and I put my hand on my pistol because my slum is in a slum. And somebody rolling up on me in a truck out in front of my slum, I actually put my hand on my pistol and I went the sideways motion, and he noticed it. And I was like, I was asking my wife, "Who is this?" She goes, "You know who that is." And he pops out, and she said his name, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is Alzheimer's. This is what it's going to be like. I'm going to be an old man someday." So I mean, yeah, the guy's shooting the kid, outside his house, knocking on the door. It's like, I'm not saying he's justified in any way. I just got to make sure I don't become that guy, because he actually rolled up, but when he rolled up, this should have been my first clue. I was he had his window down and he's saying something. I thought it was a guy there to mow the lawn, but there was no lawnmower in the back of his truck. And I can hear our podcast playing in the cab of his truck. And I'm like, "Who is this?" At that point I'd taken my hand off
He's
the
got
gun.
to be crazy then.
Yeah. So, anyways, my buddy and we we talked out in the front for a while. I hadn't seen him in a while, and it was good catching up. But he was talking about the podcast, and this goes back to Josh's thing about what was it? My mind is stuck on Nord Stream, but you brought Wuhan, right? His problem with us, he goes, "Here's y'all's problem: is you always say black helicopters." And I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist. He goes, "You need to get away from that." He's like, "You need to get away from thinking that, your views on things are conspiracy like, and you want a disclaimer and say, I'm not a tinfoil hat guy." It's like, you got to get away from that, because the calls that and his point was a little bit deeper, but I agreed that, yeah, I mean, the calls we've made have kind of been on point, and we don't need to I don't need to color myself with a brush to make a disclaimer. Hey, I'm not trying to I don't want y'all to think I'm crazy. But, and look at the Wuhan thing. We were freaking spot on with that. I think we got some of our videos taken down. The Nord Stream pipeline.
Hey, maybe I can go back and request another appeal on that thing now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like this stuff is not conspiracy. If we think, that, I think we should stop using that word. I'm not trying to be conspiracy. I'm not trying to be black helicopter. It's just like, this is our analysis of the situation. And you should really think of this point of view. It's our analysis. It's not a fact, but we've put all these facts together. This is the conclusion we've made, and this is what we think. It doesn't make it a conspiracy. And, the disclaimer is, hey, this is our analysis. It's not an opinion. It's an analysis. So I thought that was a good point. So I appreciate Michael listening. Appreciate, everybody. I mean, there's people that hit me up every once in a while and say, "Dude, I forgot you listen. I forgot that you're a regular listener." People hitting us up, "Oh man, you guys haven't recorded in 9 days." It's like, geez, man, I didn't know you cared. And I didn't know Chris didn't listen until tonight. So, Josh, I'm going to kick it back to you to close it out if you want to kick it to Roger. But I really do appreciate everybody listening, and don't get around to telling you near enough. But looks like I'm going to skate through the tornadoes tonight. It was getting kind of chippy there. If you guys were watching the video, you could see a lot of lightning. And it's pretty rough, but looks like I'm safe for tonight. So, Josh, I'll kick it to you.
Yeah, we were kind of hoping the tornado would come through. That way we could, get some, maybe pick up a couple of sympathy listeners.
Get some quality
C3.
time. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Talk about going viral. Check out this independent podcast. The guy got blown. Yeah, it'd be awesome, man. Go viral in a second.
That's right. We could actually turn around and sell that video to news stations and stuff like that, dude. Be
And
straight
maybe get a
fire.
new mic.
Maybe get a new mic. It's funny. Chris says he doesn't listen, but if he didn't listen, how would he know that your mic is quiet? Right. So,
I will
you know,
purposely
uh,
make Luke's mic louder for this episode.
Just blow
you
out
should
people's
every
ears. When
no 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 every episode you should just quiet it down just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, right?
It's gonna
Until
be like that Howard Stern episode. I'm gonna make his voice so deep and so loud that you're gonna be able to sit on that speaker when he's talking, and good things are gonna happen.
yeah. uh, yeah. So yeah, that's actually that's actually a really good point that that your buddy brought up. Instead of caveating everything, just be like, hey, here's our opinion on it based on some analysis and some due diligence, and this is what we think, and this is why, and take it for what it's worth. Here's a new lens to look at this whatever we're talking about through. No, it's fair. It's definitely a fair point, and it's a good one too. So I don't have again, I don't have a lot of shout outs. I'm really terrible at shout outs. I apologize. Everybody who's joined the Slack channel, there's some good discussions in there. You know, and stuff. So we definitely appreciate it. And like we just got done talking about time, right? I'm gonna get more money here in 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks after that, I'm gonna get paid again. Uh, but I'm not gonna get my time back. I'm not getting more time. That's just, it's just it is what it is. So we definitely appreciate everybody and their time. We truly do. We enjoy doing this. We would probably do this even if nobody listened. Just the fact that people actually sit down and take some time out of their day to listen to us crazy people ramble. We certainly appreciate it. So just a couple of shout outs, Jason in Louisiana. We really appreciate you listening. Admiral Dave, I know Admiral Dave is, an absolute loyal listener, and we definitely appreciate him listening. The Ryans up in Virginia, Dave up in Virginia as well. Definitely appreciate you listening. And the regular cast and crew, Joe down in Florida, Big Game James down in Florida as well. And I need to text him and hit him up. So yeah, that's going to do it for us. Looks like Luke's going to survive the night. He's not going to get hit by the tornado. He's not going to evacuate to his bathtub and pull the mattress over him to survive. So we're not going to get any sympathy listeners out of this episode. We'll have to try it again. We'll keep sending them back into Tornado Alley when we when we can. Real quick, Luke, how far? That's a drive for you, right? How long is that drive?
About five and a half hours. It's not too
Oh,
bad.
that's not bad. That's
No.
not bad at all.
It's God's country
So,
too, man. It's a nice drive.
yeah, I was gonna say it is a nice drive.
Oh, and our boy Scott. Got to give a shout out to Scott. Got to see Scott today. He's a listener. Yeah, so he enjoyed 116. So last shout out to Scott there.
Yep, definitely. Thank you, Scott. So, all right, that's gonna do it for us. I think I'm done with my. Real quick, Brandon, a loyal listener in Kansas, sent me a bottle of bourbon. It's Ben Holiday, and it's from a Missouri distillery. The barrels that it was aged in are New American oaks that were grown in Missouri. It's from corn that was grown in Missouri. I don't, I think everything is made in Missouri except for maybe the glass bottle that it comes in. It is not. It's like a $40-something bottle, MSRP anyway. I had never heard of it. Brandon shot it to me, and man, it is actually pretty good. Like it is solid, um, and I appreciate that for sure. So it's been my go-to here for the last couple of weeks. So with that, this is gonna do it. You guys take care of yourself. Be good to one another, and keep those canteen cups tightly secured.